just reconvened from our closed session. I'll ask the city attorney for any comments.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The City Council is in closed session this evening on a conference with legal counsel on the City of Galt versus Galt Wellness Center, and received an update, and there was no reportable action. Council is further in closed session on conference with legal counsel, existing litigation on Galt citizens for sensible planning versus City of Galt. Received a report from council, and there was no reportable action. Last item was public employee discipline, dismissal, release, and the City Council considered an arbitrator's award, and on a vote of 4-0, supported the arbitrator's decision to deny the grievance of former employee Emil Hammond. The members of the council voting in favor of that motion were Mayor Shelton, Vice Mayor Payne, council members Meredith and Claire. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We will now open the regular Galt City Council meeting at 7:03. Could I have the roll call, please?
Payne.
Here.
Claire.
Here.
Haynes. Meredith.
Here.
Shelton.
Here. I would ask everyone to rise for a silent prayer, and if you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, or the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And City Clerk Donna, if you could give our video statement, please.
This meeting of the Galt City Council is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable system. Tonight's meeting can be seen on Channel 14 and will also be webcast at www.sacsmetrocable.tv this Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m. Tonight's meeting can also be seen via live video streaming on the city's website at www.ci.galt.ca.us. A VHS copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address council should fill out a speaker identification form and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing council and state your name for the record.
Thank you. Agenda approval, additions, and or deletions, council? Any changes? Darrell? None?
Nope.
Okay. We will move into presentations. And tonight we have a proclamation that I have the honor of presenting for Olympic Day, June 23rd, 2010, to Stephanie. Would you come up to the podium, please, and I'll meet you there. And I see you have some guests. I think you have some Olympians from years past. Very good. Thanks for showing up. Well, this is my honor, not only as the mayor, but as a throwing coach, which some of you know I am one of the throwing coaches for Galt High School. So, and you've come down and inspired us and inspired me, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everything you've done, just not only for us, the world, but for the community. So we're not going to let you forget it, okay? Okay. Okay. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Galt, California, does hereby proclaim June 23rd, 2010 as Olympic Day in the City of Galt of California. Dedicated this day to Stephanie Brown. Sorry. I'm used to just calling you Stephanie. I'm sorry. Recognition for her accomplishments as an Olympic champion, and urges all citizens to observe the anniversary with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Stephanie?
Thanks very much.
Yeah, think you had a few words you want to say.
Thank you very much for the honor of proclaiming it Olympic Day on June 23rd. I wrote this in this essay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wrote this in response to a submittal of an application to go to the Olympic headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland. I was actually not selected to go to the headquarters for a leadership conference, but I think this essay is pretty good anyway. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from it. Whether calling for political-based boycotts, attacking the organization for unashamed commercialism, or pointing to drug cheats, the attention given to the Olympics can be deafening. In rare instances, a story will emerge that celebrates the sacrifice and dedication required for success. Both stories are meant to summon emotion. In truth, the world has an insatiable desire for a story, any story, that invokes an emotional response, either positive or negative. Surprisingly, this collective need for emotional experience is exactly why the Olympic Games continues to be the most successful athletic festival in both ancient times and today in the 21st century. In its modern form, the Olympic movement, as written in its charter, seeks to revive the philosophy of life, combining in balance whole the qualities of body, will, and mind. To give honor to the ancient games, which has its roots in spiritual and physical edification, the modern movement emphasizes the individual ideals of success in sport and in life: discipline, focus, vision, commitment, and persistence. These ideals stress the concept of overcoming the great spiritual, intellectual, and physical divide that has been exacerbated by overindulgence in modern technology and self-centered ideology. They focus on the joy of the struggle and an individual's journey from the realm of the ordinary and impossible to a place where one can experience the supernatural like eternal moment. This inner endeavor to surpass limitations allows one to thrive when faced with challenges both on and off the field of play, and encourages them to exceed expectations via internal reflection and personal transformation. The Olympic movement in its promotion of turning these inward ideals into outward action also puts a focus on the element of humanism, the commonality of the human condition. Our common human nature demands that explanation for the spirit within us, that transient element that stirs inside, that leaps with excitement or moans in agony during physical, intellectual, spiritual contests. No matter the age, race, cultural origins, the way a person competes and how he plays will bear his soul and spirit to others around him. The same thing that feeds athletes' aspiration to achieve greatness also inspires others to reach their goals. This struggle and subsequent outcome transcends culture and unites each and every person who witnesses it. Despite the constant barrage of negativity that surrounds the games, each time an athlete steps up to the starting block, or when the horn blows to signal the start, the world stands together on the sidelines, waiting for the emotion to awaken inside them. In this moment, the mode of independent self transforms to a common and unified spirit. The modern Olympic movement seeks to promote the harmony that must exist on a global scale, not only through words and ideals, but also action and participation. Again, it goes on from there. I will go ahead and, if anybody would like to read the final copy, I can go ahead and email them, but those are definitely words from the heart, and I really appreciate the opportunity to celebrate Olympic Day with Galt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Bennett. In the year 1984, I was chosen to be a torch runner, and my run was down in Santa Barbara, California, next to the ocean. I had a good time at 10:30 a.m. Everyone could see me. It wasn't in the dark, right next to the ocean. The vehicles on the freeway actually came to a stop. They were honking their horns. The trucks, the diesels, were blowing their air horns. It's the very first time anyone's ever honked at me on the freeway, and they weren't mad. But just to give you an idea of the connections made from that one day, I got to meet Billy Mills. We had dinner at his home one evening. I then met Nicholas Sparks from Billy, who has wrote many books, Messages in a Bottle, The Notebook, A Walk to Remember. I got to meet Stephanie and the Trafkins and the Browns. Excellent people to meet. and excellent people to have as friends. But to give you an idea of how this connection grows, how the bonds with people grow, I got a call at my house from Eddie Hart. Eddie Hart in 1972 was the fastest man in the world. He had the misfortune at the Munich, Germany Olympics that he was the one watching his event take place on TV. His coach failed to convert the German time to American time, and he missed his run. He later on did win a gold medal in the 4x100 relay, so he wasn't without a medal. The point is, he calls my house to see if I could have Stephanie call him. So that's how that eternal flame keeps burning right there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Oh, okay. You want to read that off?
The next presentation is Cal Valley Solar, cost saving on solar installation at city facilities.
Andrew, is this test working with? Is it warming up in there? Okay, can we possibly get a, right here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the council for your time tonight and also for the cooperation and access to your records and your personnel, facilities, and so forth over the last several months. For the last several months, we've been looking at some of your electrical usage through the past 18 months, and we've come up with some trends that we'd like to bring on today, and also some possible solutions for the future as your sewer plant is coming online with its tertiary filtration and its UV radiation. From our talking with the sewer manager, the electric bill is expected to probably more than double before the system is up and going. So I'd like to go ahead and, if we got lights, camera, and action. It's not coming up at all. We have to. There we go. There we go. Okay, there it is, bright and green. Currently, the totals that we had for the city for the last 18 months have been averaged into the your monthly average. Unfortunately, we didn't have any current data after March 1st, and there was a 5.5% increase in the SMUD utility rates on March 1st. So this is not reflective of the increase as of March 1st. There's also an additional 2.25% SMUD increase coming January 1st of 2011. So those increases are not added into the costs that we're going to be showing you tonight. So the total usage for the city was 1.8 megawatts per hour. So we've got a lot of electricity going on. This is for all 7 departments, this including the Parks and Rec, the city, the police department, the sewer plant as it is now. So currently you're using about 5,000 kilowatt hours per day, which you're bringing in from SMUD at a cost of about $580 a day. Current bill is about $211,000 a year. Okay, so now come November, when the sewer treatment plant comes on, the estimated usage of the sewer plant alone is going to be more than the current usage of the city. Combined with the sewer plant, the UV sterilization and treatment, and the current usage of the city, we're going to be now up at 4.5 megawatts of power a year, megawatt hours. Now, in the year 2020, if we extrapolate the SMUD increases out, you're going to be paying about 15 cents a kilowatt hour, or $1,935 a day. Estimated in 2030, it's going to be up to $2,477, assuming that your usage stays exactly the way it is today. So as you can see, if you look down this road, it's going to get a little expensive to turn the lights on in Galt. So go to the next slide here. So what are we going to do when the power bills double? We could reduce our usage, we could turn off lights, we could close offices, we could work half days, we could be more efficient in our usage, we could buy more efficient light bulbs, or with this power issue we've got, we could try to generate our own power, which is what we'd like to talk to you about today. Go ahead and scroll down. So if we're going to generate our own power, there's a couple things we'd like to do. We'd like to be clean. We don't want any emissions into the air or the water. We don't want any kind of pollution in our town of Galt. We need a lot of power, so the power source needs to be plentiful, and we're going to need power for the next 30, 40 years, so the power needs to be renewable. So any bright ideas on how we can get clean, cheap, renewable power? I would say go ahead. We have been out to a lot of the different departments within the city, and we've looked at a lot of roofs, we've looked at a lot of power usage, and one thing we notice is that there is more usage than there is roof. So the question is, where could we put enough panels to generate enough power to supply the city of Galt with its requirements? In talking with the sewer manager, he said, we're not using these settling ponds, and they are available if you care to use them. So we went out and did some measuring and looking at the ponds, and this is a picture from my airplane, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 ponds that are available for usage as a solar farm. Now, I don't think we need all of them. Based on your usage and based on the power produced by each panel, so many square feet will provide the power needed for Galt. So you have a total of 783,000 square feet available in these 4 ponds. Again, I don't think we're going to need them all, but for graphic purposes, I went ahead and put solar panels in the 4 ponds. So again, we probably won't need all of these. It depends on the panels that are picked to go in here. But it gives you a kind of an idea of the layout of the panels. So as far as our requirements, City of Galt has the need. We've got power that's increasing in cost and also in usage. We've got the space at the sewer plant where we can actually go ahead and put these panels. The technology is there. The panels have become more efficient. The inverters have become more efficient over the years. So your price per kilowatt has come down. And so the question is do we have the desire to be energy independent and self-sufficient as the City of Galt? If we don't do this, what's the alternative? The SMUD rates keep going up. Currently they're 11 cents and going up 5.5% or 2.25%. We're going to have increased consumption with the UV sterilization. And I hate to borrow it, but you're renting your power right now. You're paying your power bill and the money's gone. Once you spend it, it's gone. We're dependent on carbon fuels of some sort, whether they're propane or some sort of natural gas. There's some sort of combustion going on to generate the power that you're currently using. And that causes some pollution into the air, possibly the water. If you're a believer in the global warming, this is one of the problems, is the carbon fuels. So there's environmental concerns as to how are we going to generate and sustain our city. If we do this, we lock in our energy savings for the next 40 years. We know what we're paying. We're paying for our system, which is generating the electricity. At the end of a term, you will own the system. Any electricity generated after that is a benefit at no cost. We're going to reduce the electric bill from month 1. So the first payment on the system would be less than the current payment on your UV system. We're going to support the local economy. Currently, Galt has 22% unemployment rate. We're going to hire 50% of our employees from Galt. We're going to bring some life into the city. We're going to increase Galt's image as an environmental leader. Other cities are going to be looking to Galt to see what they did to solve their energy problem. And we're going to throw one in. We're going to give something to the kids. Steve and I, my partner and I, are both coaches at the Galt youth baseball level, and we're going to donate some panels so that we can provide lights for the kids. So on Harvey Park and Community Park, we're going to put in enough panels to provide the kids with free field lights for the duration of the system. So we want to give back. We're both residents of Galt. Our business is in Galt, and we have shopped long and hard to come up with a system that will benefit Galt and start paying for itself at day one. Okay. Okay. This is my partner, Steve Justice.
Thank you for your time. On these slides right here, you know, there's a lot of information, and everybody's going, okay, get to the point, get to the point, get to the point. Mayor Sheldon, if I could tell you that I could put a system here in Galt, and you wouldn't have to pay anything except for your normal monthly electric bill, would you say okay to that?
I would say I'd be interested in sitting down and talking to you.
Okay. If I could tell you that SMUD would cut you a check every year for putting this program in place, would you sit down and talk to me about that too?
Sure. Have you sat down with Kurt and the city manager already, I presume?
We've Jason and I
Okay.
yeah, he knows me pretty well. My partner and my company, we devoted a lot of man time and man hours to this. We've gone out and got bids from different people. We're giving Galt the absolute bottom line best deal that we can do with solar. Bottom line. And we're going to put a farm here, and we want everybody to know that it's here. And SMUD, we've already talked to SMUD, and they're on board with it too. There's so much on board that there's over 120 other cities wanting this solar farm. But after I spoke to him and told him that we could be a leader, he would definitely take one of those people off and put us at the top of the list. I just need to know what the city of Galt wants to do. If your sewer treatment plant is going to push your bill to $60,000 a month, and we're having problems paying $17,000 right now, something's got to be done. Okay, you know, you do the math; those are very big numbers. Now, if we put a solar farm in, most of your electric bill is going to go away. I mean, if you buy a car, and somebody said you can get a good deal on this car, you lease this car, and you save money and you own it at the end. Why wouldn't you? Especially if it's less than owning it. There's just different things that you can do with this system, and it puts us on the map. And not just puts us on the map, there's not going to be a cost to you. They will eventually ask for a small down payment, a deposit, 4% of the total system. But once it's built, and it will be built by 50% of the local area residents here who need work, you will get that money back after 90 days. There is no risk to you at all. We're creating jobs, and we're putting a farm here in town that will produce electric. Once this lease payment is done and the system is paid for, you will have approximately 18 to 20 more years of free electric. Essentially, you are buying a power plant, and it'll be right out the sewer treatment plant. My partner will finish the presentation, but I just wanted to clear up a few things and try to get some people's attention, because I want you guys to understand that, you know, we're here in Galt, and we're going to stand by our work, period. Okay? We're not going to be somebody that comes into town, builds it, and gives you a guarantee on a box, and they skip town. The guarantee from us is here, so you'd have to come to us. We're going to maintain it at no cost to you. So my partner will finish the presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any more questions or anything else. But I just wanted you to understand, you know, some of the stuff from the beginning, because people were going, you know, and I just wanted to try to explain it a little bit more.
All right. Thank you. Actually, I think that's we went through that in this last slide. Okay, as Steve mentioned, to get started, it's fairly harmless up front. We're going to ask for a refundable 3.5% deposit. This will be refunded to you 90 days after the system is up and running, after you've started producing electricity. Cal Valley Solar will start the system design. We'll do site surveys. We'll develop a timeline for installation. Cal Valley Solar is going to work with SMUD and City to get this thing completed on time by the time your UV starts to come online. So we would like to get started as soon as possible on this. The lease starts, and again, once it starts running, then you'll get your deposit back. Your monthly payments on the system will be less than what you're currently paying or will be paying once the UV starts. So I'd like to thank you for your consideration and see if there's any questions, and we look forward to working with the City of Galt. Any questions from the board?
Council?
I just have one. If you go out Grant Line Road, I think it's by Mather, it looks like there's a solar farm. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. It's a large area out there that you drive by for days. It's out by Aerojet, I believe. Is that the one you're talking about? Yes. And that was put up, and those are fixed arrays. They stand there in the sun, and they catch the sunlight, and they convert it into electricity. And it's coming in as DC electricity, which is like battery electricity. There's a unit called an inverter, which inverts the sine wave and converts it into alternating current, which we can all use for our plugs and our lights. So it's a system that will generate electricity, convert it over to AC, and it will feed it back into the line, offsetting any kind of usage that you have.
It looks like it rotates to follow the sun.
There are some that rotate, and we want to look at that too as an option. There's a fixed rotation which actually tracks the sun in the morning, and then it rotates as the sun travels overhead. It maintains a direct 90-degree angle at the solar panel, which is more efficient. So it is a way to harvest more sun because you're actually following the sun as it rotates. And we want to look into that because it would save you some money up front because you won't need as many panels because your panels are producing more. There is a little bit higher cost to set in the tracker. So it's kind of an offset, and we really need to get out there and do some surveying and figure out what you really need to come up with a proposal that's dead on for Galt.
Terry, can you outline some of the other cities regionally that have done similar types of installations to what you're proposing?
Well, I know there's one, and I visited it up at El Dorado Hills, the sewer treatment plant at El Dorado Hills. And they've had a system up there for about 5 years, I believe it is, 6 years. And they're using some of the older technology on the panels and the inverters, and they're doing a great job up there generating about 1 megawatt. But the panels that they're using are as efficient, so therefore they need more of them. So if you do a global look at their farm, which you can Google, it's quite large compared to what we would be putting out here, especially if we use trackers and we use some of the more efficient panels. I think they had 170-watt panels, and we're talking about 315-watt panels.
And Greg and I have talked about that installation at the El Dorado Irrigation District before. Their initial energy bill savings was essentially 100%. Is that correct?
Yes.
They went from, I think it was an $82,000 a month energy bill initially to $18, which was the cost to be connected to PG&E's grid.
Correct. Yeah, because you're using power 24 hours a day, but you're only generating it for 6 hours, you will be taking electricity off the grid. So there is a fee for being connected to the grid. So your bill will never go away. I mean, even for your resident, the lowest you can probably get for a residence is about $6 to $10 a month. I'd pay $6 to $10 for my electric bill any day. But during the day when you're producing, you're going to be backfeeding. There's going to be a meter called a net meter, which rotates backwards essentially. So you're getting credit for generating this electricity during the day, and then at night you're drawing some electricity off. Like right now, we'd be drawing off the grid because the sun is going down and we're using electricity. But during the day, it would be generating electricity, which would go back on the grid, giving you a credit. And if you're gone on the holidays or the weekends, the system still generates electricity. So if you leave on a Friday and you come back Monday, you're back on Wednesday as far as your bill.
Terry, can you tell me during the winter months when the days are shorter, the clouds are out, what type of impact will that be on the panels and its ability to generate? electricity?
Well, it's true. I mean, there is a drop-off in the winter. That goes with any solar system, and it's a matter of designing the system, so that you offset that with some production during the summer. The sun rises during the summer. It gets higher in the sky, and in the winter, of course, it goes down a little bit, goes south. So it's lower in the horizon. So there is a drop off in the number of hours. Now again, that's offset by a tracker, so you actually get some increased harvest even if the sun's down. Even on a cloudy day, you will still get electric power.
So basically, anything lost during the winter, you'll pick it up in the summer, but you'll get credit, and you'll.
They generally adjust your your bill annually. So they have a net meeting at the end of a year period. Usually, when you commission your system, is when they come in and they do an adjustment for you. So if you commission it in July, they'll come back in July.
Okay.
So the rough numbers that you presented tonight are reflective of what in an average year, what you'd expect to produce.
Correct. Yeah.
Taking all the winter months and everything into consideration.
Right. Based on your annual usage is what we are generating annually. So in the wintertime, yeah, you won't get as much sun. In the summertime, you'll get obviously more sun.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council?
I'd like to thank you guys for your presentation, and I know we don't have a formal proposal.
We do.
We do.
Well, what I'd like to direct staff to do, if
Okay.
this is okay with council, is to meet formally with Cal Valley Solar and bring back some type of a formal presentation that includes any of your comments or any of your concerns, so that we can see the entire argument before we make a decision.
Yeah, so, and meet through Jason and bring back staff's report.
Yeah. Review the proposal, meet with representatives from Cal Valley Solar, and then bring back a report to the council outlining the various issues and
Staff
things that we
report.
see.
I think it's a good idea.
I do too.
Daryl didn't want to pass you. Did you?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm very interested in seeing the proposal, and thank them for coming forward. When staff takes a look at it, if you could also let us know what kind of requirements this will need as far as any kind of EIR, that type of thing. And when we were looking at it, these types of things at SACOG, one of the problems that was out there, because this is new to the industry, so to speak, is that at a certain point you become a power company in the eyes of, I think, both the federal government and maybe the state government. And I'm sure there's a threshold of electrical generation, but if you would check on that also, just so we know whether that's a hurdle or not.
No, I already said no.
It's anything over 5 megawatts, and we're not going to be over 5 megawatts.
Okay, great.
And we checked the environmental impact report, and it's all good to go. We really spent a lot of time on this. I went out and got the finance company, the lease terms. We're going to give you guys options. But the main thing that I wanted to do was save the city of Galt money. And like I said, we're trying to make sure that that happens. So like I'm saying, I spent a lot of time out in the sewer plant with Bo. We broke down each individual light bulb to find out how much wattage they would use to come to answer any questions about how much it would be every month. And on the low side, the city of Galt is going to be paying about $60,000 a month. Now, with the lease program, we're trying to get it to the point where you're only paying $45,000 to $50,000 a month. That's a savings of $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year for the next 20 years. Now, if you do the math, if this system is good for 40 years, if you pay this system off in 20 years, you've got 20 years of free electricity. Do the math. At today's rates, and you know that it's going to increase, you're going to have $60,000 times 12 months for the next 20 years. That's a lot of money. You can hire police officers, you can hire more cops, you can get more jobs. There's nobody in this room that can argue with that. Money is money, and that's what it is. It talks. I mean, if you're a college football fan, you know. Big 12 saved itself by coming up with some money, you know. Texas was looking at California pretty hard, so it didn't happen. But I just want to thank you guys for your time, and I want you guys to know that Terry and I, we've been in Galt for a while. We want to do the best deal possible for Galt, and we want to take care of everybody here. We're not in this to make $1 million or nothing like that. We're just here to help the city of Galt and mostly the people here. It's kind of depressing when you know a lot of people who are out of work, and we can give some jobs. So again, I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And I do appreciate to hear your comments about hiring from within the city. That's very refreshing.
Oh, yeah.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Well, again, going back to our baseball story, we're on the board of directors of Galt Youth Baseball, and we get applications coming in from a lot of parents who are claiming hardships because they don't have jobs. And I know a lot of parents that are out of jobs and unemployed, and they're sitting around waiting for something to happen. And we got into this to make something happen in Galt. So I want to thank you for your time, your consideration. I'd be happy to meet with you to go through the specifics and answer any questions that you might have. If you want to go, I could probably arrange a trip to a solar farm for you, if that would be of interest to the board. So I want to thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. While they're picking up and everything, if we could go to public comment.
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the council on any item of interest to the public or on any agenda item before or during consideration of the item. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the city clerk prior to addressing the council. We request that you state whether you live within the Galt city limits or the county area. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker.
First speaker.
Rick Reese, topic for discussion, flag, farmers market, and Galt Festival.
How's it going, Council? I'm back. I heard that there might be some discussion about the flag again, flags being the city or the ordinance being rewritten. I just wanted to make a presence here. Kind of been talking to the other business owners that had the flags, and I talked to all of them except for El Rodeo, and I kind of let them know that I'm going to give my best effort and see what we can do to revise the ordinance with the flags. The comment that the one comment that I did want to make, and I had made to Jason earlier today, was I don't think it's tacky. I think it's very professional. I said that before. But if the ordinance does not allow me to fly the flag, it's going to look tacky when it's flying in the back of my truck parked. And I don't want to have to do that. So I want to do whatever I can do to work with whoever I need to work with to come to a kind of a resolution to this. I hate to sound so be such a stickler about this thing, but the flag is just crazy to me how well it brings in new customers. It's crazy to me. Every day, every customer that comes in, I ask them, if it's a new customer, how did you find out about me? Oh, I drove by seeing the flag, or someone told me, or I was referred by this person. But the amount of people that are telling me that they're seeing that flag, it blows me away. And I just thought I'd come back and talk a little bit and just let you know that the flag, it means a lot to me. It's doing good things for family barbershops. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the farmers market. Farmers market was supposed to be every Thursday in the new quote-unquote parking lot. Now they've moved it out to the street between A and C Street. I don't have a problem with it because I see the big picture. The big picture with doing this is to bring the people down to the business district. And I understand that. I see the whole picture. I do. And I'm thankful for that. I really am. Because the more people that come down there, the more people that see that there's businesses down here they may have not seen. I get that. I really do. But what it does to my business and every other business on that block, on that day, it kills me. It literally kills my business.
They don't start the farmer's market until 4 o'clock. But they start setting up at 3 o'clock. That's one thing. So when they start setting up, you're killing my business to kids that get money from their mom and dad when they get off of work. Parents work. They got to wait for mom and dad to come home and give them money to go get to go get a haircut at the barber shop. Not only on top of that, the fathers that are saying, "Hey, come on, let's go get a haircut together." Now they can't even come down the street. Yeah, okay. People are going to say, "Yeah, well, you have the big parking lot across the street, Rick. They can park over there." I don't know how many of you guys have showed up for that farmer's market deal they did last week, but there is no parking anywhere. None. I mean, that whole lot they had city car trucks out there. They had guys that were putting out A-frames to block the roads and hang up signs and so on and so forth. That's one thing. But it kills the businesses. It really does. I spoke with Gary the other day, and he did all right. The Little Amigos Market killed him. Metro PCS closed their doors and left at 4 o'clock. So putting it out on the street isn't a real bright idea, because now you're taking away from potential sales dollars that the city is in need of. So you're taking the busy block there from A to C on Lincoln Way, and you're pretty much shutting it down. Well, that's that. And I'm going to go on to the next thing because I don't have much time. But I sat out in front of the barber shop from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and I closed at 5:30. And I just wanted to kind of be certain I wasn't being the devil's advocate here. So I
Sir,
sat
you'll have
there.
to wrap it up.
So I sat there and I watched it. And the beer garden with the people drinking the beer and walking out of the alley because there's no one to monitor them, that's kind of craziness. But I run a family business, and I have kids, elderly, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas that come into my business. And the beer is just uncalled for if they can't keep it in there.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
Just a clarification, Boyce, when did we start with the beer out at the farmer's market?
We had a beer booth that was run by the Knights of Columbus last Thursday for the kickoff, and it was located in the alley between Gary's and the other where Laheim used to be, and they got permission from the owner of IGA to have it there at that location.
Wow.
Yeah, that
That's
alley
really,
belongs to the...
That's really stepping away from the family environment that we wanted to create with the farmer's market. And I'm not saying that, Boyce, you had anything to do with it because it wasn't a city booth or anything like that. I'm just saying that we need to come up with a way to make sure that doesn't happen again. There are events that take place here in the city of Galt where that's appropriate, but I don't think a weekly farmers market needs to have a beer garden, on a regular basis. Do you know if that's something that they're planning on doing weekly?
Boyce, let me get him on this. It was suggested by the shop local group that they pattern it after Lodi, which the idea is you can come out, relax, buy your vegetables. We had music there, and it was trying to create that same type of atmosphere like they have in Lodi, which is also on Thursday. And in addition to that, I talked to just about every other vendor or every other merchant. And for example, the lady that owns a bookstore said she had the best day that she's ever had, and it was from 5 to 8. The Bargain Boutique, they did a great job. Stan Toscano, those are the people that I talked to personally. And I know no matter what you do, not everyone's going to like it, but it was a great celebration for the new facade that we have down there, and frankly, I was pretty proud of, and I appreciate the Parks and Recs department and what they did. And as far as the beer garden was concerned, I was there. I didn't see anything out of the way. I don't know that the police were called. I didn't see any juveniles drinking. It was just supposed to be, you know, kind of a nice, relaxing atmosphere. And I'm sure that Boyce, you know, didn't have anything to do with it, so that's why I spoke up.
Well, after hearing the response, though, I'm even a little more worried because, you know, council didn't provide direction to the Shop Local campaign to model the farmers market to be what they wanted it to be. We had a vision for the farmers market, and that's what we approved. And to hear that it's been changed and it's been manipulated to become an event that we want to mold after the one that takes place in Lodi and add the element of alcohol in there, I'm a little disappointed.
Well, and the Shop Local group is mostly sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce with the support of the city for the downtown area. And I've been to, and the businesses as well. And I've been to the one in Lodi, and it's a great atmosphere. And I'm sorry you're disappointed in it. They put a lot of work. They put effort. They put their money into the posters and trying to help the city of Galt help keep these people shopping in Galt, as well as keep the businesses going. And the ones that I talked to, they were pleased. They couldn't wait to have it again and have it on Lincoln Way on the street. And the beer garden was sponsored by the Knights of Columbus, a very reputable organization.
Well, okay, wait a minute, okay, because I can see this going south, and, you know, if we need to have another meeting, we will discuss this, because that's one thing that we've been trying to do, and nothing against you, Rick, because I know that you're very passionate at what you want to speak about, but now I've got you speaking from the audience, so, you know, if you want to meet with, you know, some of the council members, you know, afterwards, I'm more than happy to meet with you too. I think, you know, the others of us are. You could meet with a couple of us. I mean, I was there. I mean, everyone else was chiming in. I went into Gary's. He said it's a busy evening he had. I was there at like 6:15 and stayed for an hour, and I got to park in the bank parking lot. And when I left, there was cars going in and out of the parking lot you're referring to. So, to me, it was a nice atmosphere. You know, so okay. Anyway,
I'd still like staff to come back to us and explain. I mean, if the vision for the farmers market has changed, I think council has a right and a responsibility to have some input in that as a group, instead of just having, you know, a few voices from the Shop Local campaign making decisions on behalf of the entire council.
I have to agree with Andrew on this one.
I would just like to add, you know, the beer garden, that could have been a one-time deal. I know they've discussed maybe a wine tasting further on in the summer, but it was in a secluded area. And then also, if you notice, I had a bounce house that was clear across the park. So what I tried to do with that, and I know how some people do feel about having alcohol at, say, family-oriented events, my intention was to have a major separation where, say, the kids' activities were located, which was over there at Smud Park. I had the band located on the sidewalk next to where L'Haim was. And that was a concern that I had, and personally, I thought it went well. Do we need it? No, we don't, Councilmember Meredith, but we did have it.
Yeah, I would also say that we have a Galt Festival coming up, and it's a family-oriented event, and there's definitely a place for alcohol there. So it's not something that has just come up for the farmers market.
Okay, how about this? I agree with you, but through working with the city manager, maybe two council members, and you could work with Boyce. I don't want to tell you which staff members to work with, sir, but and if Rick or whoever, maybe you guys could have a meeting and bring a staff report back. I mean, if
What we
that's what
can
you-
do is,
because we're getting off, it's not
a couple
agenda.
of meetings ago, we brought back the farmers market to the city council. That time, council approved the use, the location, the time, and everything else about the farmers market, including the closing of Lincoln Way for the farmers market. We didn't go into details as far as what was planned. I think at that time we didn't really know, other than there was going to be a variety of vendors down there. Since that time, Shop Local has kind of taken the lead and coming up with some ideas of how to get people down there. What we can do is bring a staff report back to the council at a future meeting, kind of outlining what some of those thoughts and ideas might be the remainder of the summer, and give the council an opportunity to address and weigh in on whether the ideas are appropriate or not for the farmers market that he wants to have.
But in the meantime, are we still going to be allowing alcohol to be served at the farmers market?
I don't know that there's any plans for, there's one on Thursday. I don't think there's any plans for beer garden on this Thursday. I thought it was the opening night one-time deal.
If it's not a ongoing thing, then I agree. I don't see the immediate urgency. But.
Right. Well, I think that was part of with something once a month, and again, we're going off here. So
would the council like staff to bring back something about the farmers market?
I think that's a great idea. I can't speak for the other council members, but is that direction, council?
I'd be good with that.
Yeah, I would just add one more thing and I'll let it go, is
please.
that in order to sell beer, they did go through the proper channels to get it approved.
Right, as is required. Okay, next speaker, please.
Tracy Hansen introduced herself officially as the new fire chief.
Good evening, Mayor Shelton and members of the council. I've worked with many of you for a number of years, especially since our merger with the Galt Fire Protection District, but I have been officially appointed to the position of fire chief for the Cosumnes CSD Fire Department effective June 1st. And I just wanted to say how much I look forward to our continued collaborative relationship and working to serve the citizens of the city of Galt and providing for their fire and emergency medical services. We've had a great relationship with Jason, and we'll continue to work with all of your staff to make sure that we work collaboratively on just being a good resource and for working on in any way possible to better our services to your community. So I just wanted to introduce myself and just recommit to you our dedication and our continued working relationship with the city and its staff.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
John Slaughterback.
John Slaughterback, I live in the city. I've seen an article in the paper, and I tried to send it to council and the public works director and the mayor, but I don't think it went through, so I made a hard copy and put it in front of you. I don't know, you may have already read it, but I thought it was something that if you hadn't, that I'd make sure you've seen it. It's pretty important, I thought. And I wanted to say something about that. Sacramento Regional Sewer Plant won't need to expand. Efforts to conserve water have slowed the flow of sewage into Sacramento, removing the need to expand the controversial expansion of the regional sewage treatment plant. 50% of regional's customers are metered. Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District withdrew a request to expand its state wastewater discharge permit by 20%. Attributable to water meter installation and rebates on low flush toilets and low water usage clothes dryers. My concerns are twofold. One problem is excessive operating and maintenance costs at the wastewater treatment plant caused by unmetered excessive water usage throughout the city. The second problem, the city has spent millions of dollars to retrofit the potable drinking water for arsenic treatment. The city now plans to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year for arsenic treatment and for other chemicals to treat our drinking water. And without meters, much of the water will go down the sewer drain. What doesn't go down the sewer drain will go down the storm drain because of careless watering practices. Tens of thousands of dollars in chemical costs, some of which will go down the drain. I'm repeating myself there. 2 years ago, the Public Works Director told Council, now is the time the city needs to address the second phase water meter installation. He said, if you don't address this issue, it just makes my job easier. In effect, he's taken this monkey off of his back and put it on Council's back. Council has never acknowledged anything about this. I really don't understand why. You would think there'd be some acknowledgement, either some reason why you're not addressing it, but there should be something said about it, and you're not even acknowledging it. Apparently, Council is hoping this problem will go away for some future council. This wouldn't be a concern if the residents weren't paying for your procrastination. Councilman Andrew Meredith, the financing scheme you used to finance home solar panel installation was the work of a leader. If you had used this financing scheme to finance the second phase water meter installation program, would have been great also, would have been further your leadership that much further. How can council have a clear conscience and continually increase utility rates on the residents of Galt, knowing there are remedies to this problem? The chemical usage we use to treat our water going down the drain, we need to address it. The operation and maintenance costs at the wastewater treatment plant. It would help if we didn't send out so much water out there, and one way to not send out so much wastewater out there is for to have water meters. I'd like to see us put new toilets in also, but I do have one question here. I would like an answer for it. The sewer plant upgrade and its operation schedule for operation has been moved to next year. Are the residents of Galt paying a penalty for the city not meeting the state's water permit requirements? I don't really understand. This permit was due this year, I understood, and now we've moved it to next year. Are we paying a penalty because we're not in compliance with our permit? Did somebody answer that?
You have 30 seconds.
Pardon?
You have 30 seconds.
All right, I just need an answer there for that. Somebody. Mayor, could somebody answer that for me?
Jason, would you like to respond?
Council like us to respond?
Yes.
If you would, please.
The question is whether we're paying any penalties right now for the wastewater treatment plant. The answer is no.
No. Okay.
We got free gratis. Thank you.
Thank you,
John.
Thank you.
Tina Marie Sutherland, a request for amendment to the Galt Festival program, a car show on Saturday, July 3rd at Veterans Field.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what we need to do to amend the plan. I submitted our schedule because, as we know, when you plan anything, as just was shown with the street fair that you have, things change. We have a car show. It was last year. We're planning on one this year. Rick, that was here earlier, he's the one putting it together. We need to know what you expect from us so we can get this approved. What do you need of me? We can provide more security if that's what need be. By the way, we do provide security at our beer garden, if anybody's wondering about the open alcohol.
Would it be possible to put something in writing?
Yeah.
And provide us with what it is you're seeking to achieve? Or there's not enough time?
We won't have another
We
council
have,
meeting.
yeah, we have our festival is the 4th of July weekend.
Oh yeah, that's right. We won't.
We're having the car club that is doing it is Daily Draggers. He is, what is he, I don't know the technical term that they use in their club. He's like the co-chair or vice president of the group. He is putting it together, Rick is. It's going to be enclosed in the Veterans Field.
You just need to just submit something in writing, and maybe meet with Boyce and Armando, review exactly what you want to do. The police chief will take a look at it and
Okay.
make sure everything
So I need
is
to meet
fine.
with
It can-
Boyce, Armando, and the police chief?
you don't have to meet with all of them. You might want to meet with Boyce tomorrow just to go over, make sure we understand all that you want to do, and we can tell you what some of the requirements might be, and then staff can review the information, and if we're comfortable with what's being provided, then you can be able to have the car show.
Okay, so if I do this tomorrow, when will I know that it's going to be okay? By Boyce or by? I kind of.
It shouldn't take very long for us to review the information. Depends on how that you provide us with the.
Well, I'll get it tomorrow. I'll have it there. So that's. I'm just. Sadly, we're up on a deadline. So I kind of, got people coming from out of town bringing their cars. You don't want to tell them on the day before. Oh, sorry. So we will have it to Boyce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next speaker?
Joanne Walters, speaking on behalf of the Galt Festival.
My name's Joanne Walters, and I was going to speak about the same thing because we thought we had to present something tonight to make an exception to get it approved as quick as we could because there was a problem about, having the auto show this year. And this person is new. Rick is new in town, and normally, like I said, they would have got to us in May or so, but since we didn't know about it till a few weeks ago, and like I said, we hope that you will let us have the auto show because, it's auto show, car show, because it's actually for charity. He didn't come up and speak, he had to leave, but this club does these for children, fundraisers, and it's really important that we try to have it this year because the festival has been going downhill every year because of the money economy, and this would bring in more people and maybe, help us out because we need it to have it every year for the festival. So if you could see your way, when she gets all the paperwork to let us have it, and, next year we'll come in on our schedule and do it early. And I just wanted to really come up and say how the council has been doing a good job. I haven't been able to come to some of the meetings, and I heard that Andrew was leaving us, which I thought tonight was your last night, so I wanted to wish you happiness in your new job, and sorry you're leaving, and I think you did a really good job for us in the council, and I don't know who's going to take your place, but I'm sure we'll miss you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Rich Sutherland, Amendment to Galt Festival Program.
We didn't know which order. My name is Rich Sutherland. I'm the treasurer of the Galt Festival. We didn't know which order we were going to come up in, and like I said, like Tina, my wife, said, we thought we were going to have to, have something tonight. Just wanted to state that, the car show was left off the original plan by accident. We had it last year. There were no issues. And we don't expect any this time. And just wanted to state also for the comment that was made about the beer garden, we are required to have that in a separate enclosed fenced area. We pay extra for that. We have we're not armed. We have security guards staffing that at all times, and we've complied with all the requests that the council and the chief of police has made of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Okay. Information consent calendar. Did you read those items, please?
Minutes of the special meeting of May 25th and the special and regular meetings of June 1st. City of Galt warrants. First Amendment Agreement between the City of Galt and the County of Sacramento for enforcement of regulatory compliance with National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. Appropriations limit for the fiscal year 2010-2011. Award of contract for fuel delivery. Treasurer's report for period ending April 2010. Proclamation recognizing Olympic Day, June 23rd, 2010.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll
Second?
Motion's been made and double seconded. Any further discussion? None?
No.
Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Roll call vote, please.
Payne,
Yes.
Claire,
Aye.
Haynes,
Aye.
Meredith,
Aye.
Shelton.
Here, thanks. Yes. Got lost in all the other comments. Okay. Scheduled matters, regular calendar, city attorney's office.
Mr. Mayor and council members, the item before you tonight is an update on the campaign finance limitations. And I just wanted an opportunity to talk to the council tonight about the city's campaign finance ordinance. This ordinance was adopted by the voters back in 2002, and there's been quite a lot of changes in the law relating to the regulation of campaign finances since that period of time. And in the staff report that I prepared for this evening, I noted that there's been 2 significant cases that have actually come out even within the last 6 months. I thought it was important that the council have a discussion on the state of the law in this area before the election season actually got off and running, because I think it's important for the city to establish the ground rules for the election season before people start actually providing contributions. The difficulty with waiting to address this issue until we have a problem is that typically you'll have about 80–90% of your folks will comply with the law as written, and if we wait till a point in time where we have somebody that chooses not to comply with the city's ordinance because of these new cases, and then determine that we're not going to enforce our regulations, then we've established an uneven playing field. So for that reason, I wanted to come to you tonight and talk about some of these cases and provide some recommendations as it relates to going into this election season, as well as what the city might want to consider doing beyond this election season. What I want to do is first talk to you very briefly about the case out of Long Beach, which I briefed in the staff report. Also talk about the Citizens United case, and give you kind of a synopsis of some of the key changes that have or principles that have come forward in this area of the law in the last few years, and then make my recommendations to you. The first case that I wanted to talk about briefly is this Long Beach case, and this case it just came out in April, and it's very relevant to the city of Galt because the ordinance down in Long Beach had a lot of similarities to the ordinance that we have on the books in Galt. In Long Beach, they have an ordinance that was also adopted by the voters, and it has a provision that restricts the amount of contributions that can be made to an independent committee. And in reviewing this particular ordinance, the court looked at the purposes that the city that the voters and the city had established for this ordinance, and there was a couple of purposes that had been put forward. One of the purposes that was set forward in the ordinance was to create a fair and equal opportunity to participate in municipal elections. And that's also a purpose that you find in the City of Galt's ordinance as well. And what the court held is that this purpose was not, in fact, a lawful reason to regulate the limitation on contributions. And the reason for that is because they've said that the goal of achieving equalization, which is basically limiting the amount that folks can contribute to campaigns so that others can also have a voice, has been disfavored by the courts. And this determination was actually not made in this Long Beach case. This is something that has been addressed in a long string of cases all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court level. The other purpose that was put forward in the Long Beach ordinance and is also in the Galt ordinance is to prevent corruption or the appearance of corruption. And the courts have held that this is in fact a legitimate purpose for regulating contributions. But what the Long Beach court stated was that a broad statement that this is the purpose behind the ordinance is not enough. There needs to be evidence that supports that there is a need for this type of regulation. There have been a few other courts that have looked at this type of purpose, and what they have held is that the concept of fighting corruption is usually supported when you are limiting contributions directly to a candidate, because that link, that quid pro quo, is more relevant when you're providing money directly to a candidate. But when you're talking about limiting contributions that are made to independent expenditure committees, which by definition are not tied to a candidate, the idea that you are somehow controlling corruption is a much harder case to make. And so the courts have disfavored ordinances that have limited contributions to independent expenditure committees.
Steve, before you get off of that, would you explain or define independent expenditure?
The city actually has a definition of independent expenditure in our ordinance, and basically what it states is that the expenditures made by a person in connection with a communication which is not at the behest or under the control of an affected candidate. It might be for the publication of a communication that supports a candidate or a slate of candidates, but it's not, the message that's delivered is not controlled by that particular candidate, and it's not in coordination with that particular candidate. So that's what an independent expenditure would be, and an independent expenditure committee is a group that takes in contributions in order to put forward a particular message or to support a particular candidate or candidates without being controlled by that candidate. And so the bottom line holding from the Long Beach decision is that the city or a city may not limit campaign contributions to independent expenditure committees. Now, the other thing I want to draw a distinction between is that we're talking about contributions. So this is money in to a committee. The other type of regulation is a regulation on expenditures, which is money out. And the courts have strongly disfavored any kind of expenditure limit, money out limit, because that does directly limit the freedom of speech, the ability to get your message out. If you're limited in the amount of money you spend, and that limits your ability to buy television advertising, radio advertising, print advertising. The City of Galt's ordinance is not by definition an expenditure limitation ordinance, but it's kind of a hybrid, because there are some provisions in it that indicate that if a committee is going to expend greater than $250, then there are limitations on the amount of money that you can take in. So it's what's called a hybrid ordinance, where there are certain limitations on contributions that are only triggered by the amount of expenditures a group would make. So the bottom line, as I indicated, the bottom line on the Long Beach case is that you cannot limit campaign contributions to independent expenditure committees. The second case that I wanted to briefly touch on is the Citizens United case, which came out earlier this year in January. And upon a first reading, you wouldn't think that this case would have much application to the city, because what it addressed was a long-standing federal regulation that limited the amount of money that a corporation can spend in an election process. And what the court held in this particular case is that that limitation on corporations was an unlawful restriction on the corporation's First Amendment rights. This court held that corporations, just like individuals, do in fact have First Amendment rights. And one of the items that the Federal Election Commission had put forward in order to try to argue against this decision was that corporations have the ability to form political action committees and could then spend their money through that mechanism. And the court held that that was not sufficient, that the political action committees had certain administrative requirements that went along with their formation, and that was an excessive restriction on the First Amendment rights of corporations. Well, the reason that this case has some application in Galt is because our ordinance restricts persons. And persons, by definition, our ordinance includes corporations. So to the extent that under our ordinance, if a corporation would spend more than $100, it would be required to form a committee. And looking at the logic behind the Citizens United case, it's my assessment that we would not be able to impose that restriction on corporations. So in light of the Citizens United case, I think the requirements that corporations form a committee if they expend more than $100 for independent expenditures would not be legally defensible in Galt. Now, you might argue that, well, what is really the difference between imposing that requirement on corporations versus other people or other entities that fall within the definition of persons? Well, I think that would be a very good question. At this point in time, the cases have not gone beyond saying that the limitation on corporations and having them form committees is unlawful. So as we sit here today, if the city were to enforce this requirement on, say, an individual that spent more than $100 to form a committee, that wouldn't be a legal problem, at least under the Citizens United case. So those are the two most current cases. And I think if you took those cases and then some of the other key cases that have come out over the last, say, 6 years, you can boil those cases down to what I would say are 5 overarching principles. The first one is that campaign contributions and expenditures constitute speech within the protection of the First Amendment. So why is that important? It's important because an ordinance that impacts your freedom of speech is judged under a higher standard. Typically, when we adopt an ordinance, as long as we have justification for the ordinance, we can adopt it and enforce it. But when we're regulating freedom of speech, what we have to demonstrate is that there's a substantial governmental interest that supports the limitation on that First Amendment right. So just having a conclusory statement that here's our purpose is not usually going to pass legal muster. The second overarching principle is that regulations that require disclosure of information have generally been upheld. our ordinance does have elements that requires disclosure of information. And what the courts have generally said is that's fine. Disclosure of information is a good thing. It doesn't normally restrict people from exercising their freedom of speech. It just says you got to be open with certain information. So that those elements of regulation in campaign finance are typically not litigated and are still fine. The third point, which I mentioned earlier, is that expenditure limits, which is money out, are strongly disfavored by the courts. The next point is contribution limits, which is, you know, money in, money to a committee or a candidate, have been allowed, but only in a very limited circumstance, and that's in the circumstance where the government can show that there's a need to fight corruption. And in those circumstances, it typically is easier to make that showing when the contribution limit relates to providing dollars directly to a candidate or a party, because those pose a greater risk of this quid pro quo. Campaign limitations on campaign contribution limits to other than candidates, such as independent expenditure committees, I don't think are any longer defensible under this Long Beach case. So those are, I think, the bullet points out of, you know, a very long presentation and a long staff report. But I think that if you take that information and you look at our ordinance, well, several of the stated purposes in our ordinance would no longer pass legal muster. You know, to limit the amount individuals may contribute to political campaigns in municipal elections, to encourage wide citizen participation in municipal elections, and to limit the cost of municipal election campaigns. None of those purposes have been supported by the courts. Well, there is a purpose in here that has been supported, and that's to prevent the exercise or appearance of undue or improper influence over elected officials by contributors to or independent supporters of political campaigns. A little bit broad, right? Because it covers not only limitations or fighting fraud or undue influence as it relates to candidates, but also to independent expenditure committees. So, having reviewed those cases and the purposes in our ordinance, I think that going into this election season, that what the city should do and the direction that I am seeking from the council tonight for the benefit of not only myself but also the city clerk, is that campaign contribution limits to independent expenditure committees not be enforced because of the Long Beach case. That the requirement to form a committee not be enforced against corporations making expenditures of $100 or more because of the Citizens United case. And finally, that the requirement to form a committee not be enforced against persons receiving contributions or making independent expenditures of $100 or more, also because of the logic of the Citizens United case. Now, where does that leave us? What that leaves us with in this ordinance, if the council provides that direction, is that the provisions in Galt's ordinance that limit contributions to candidates and require persons that make contributions of $100 or more to candidates to form a committee would continue to be enforced by the city. I think that in light of these recent cases, that once the city gets beyond November of 2010, that the city council ought to consider forming an ad hoc committee to review our election laws and prepare an amendment to go to the voters in 2012. Because of the fact that this ordinance was adopted by the voters, it can only be amended by the voters. And so the only thing that's available to the council at this point in time is not, you can't amend the law, but you can give direction as it relates to its enforcement, which is why what I'm seeking tonight is your direction that these certain elements of the law would not be enforced in 2010, which are essentially the provisions that relate to contributions to independent expenditure committees. We would continue to enforce limitations as it relates to candidates, and then after November of 2010, would bring this matter back to the council for further direction if you so desire. So with that brief report, I'm happy to respond to any questions you have.
I think I need a drink of water. Oh, go ahead.
You can't have mine.
Okay. Council, comments, questions? Barbara?
Well, I don't really have any comments. I think I understand the situation in that we have portions of our ordinance that have been somewhat overturned by the courts, and if we were challenged, if someone decided to bring a lawsuit against us because of this, that we wouldn't be in the best position to defend ourselves. And you're suggesting that we just not enforce it, and we state up front that we're not going to enforce it, so it's fair to everyone. Is that kind of where we're at?
Well, there's certain elements that I'm suggesting not be enforced, and those relate to limitations on contributions to independent expenditure committees, but that the limitations as it relates to candidates would still be imposed. Now, as it relates to candidates, there's a limitation on the amount of money, and there's requirements for reporting. So those would still be intact, and they would be enforceable.
Exactly. That's all my comments.
Darrell?
No, I think Steve's done a great job of bringing us up to date on where the recent court cases leave us and our ordinance, and I think their recommendation's a good one, and I support it.
You know, I'm going to support it too. Darrell, I think as you had mentioned it before about cleaning up the language on this, because there was questions about whether or not it would be upheld by the higher courts if it was ever challenged. So, and we've always talked about transparency. So I'm going to support you on this because I think it's in the benefit of the community. I really do.
Yeah, I can't support the idea of not enforcing a policy that was enacted overwhelmingly by the voters of this community. I understand our city attorney's argument that there are some language issues, and they've been highlighted by the fact that some of these recent court cases have gone against, unfortunately, John Q. Public. I hear the argument a lot about freedom of speech applied to loosening campaign contribution restrictions. I think it's a hypocritical argument because essentially by loosening these campaign contribution restrictions, you're making it more difficult for the average citizen to run for and to actually have an opportunity to serve on their elected boards in the community. It opens the door to special interest groups. It opens the door for these special interest groups to essentially purchase candidates and put them into office. And I won't support just single-handedly walking away from the enforcement of a policy, like I said, that was enacted overwhelmingly by the voters of the city of Galt. This wasn't a policy that was put in place by a city council 15 years ago. This is a policy that was put before the voters and was overwhelmingly supported.
Okay. Well, I agree with your recommendation. I mean, this is one of the things that we had talked about with reviewing continually our ordinances and our policies. I mean, even our advisory committees. So I believe it's something that we should do.
And just for the record, we're just talking about this election of not enforcing it, but after the election that it would be cleaned up before the next election occurs and sent to the voters, right?
That's correct, and I think the reason that I'm most sensitized by this is because in the last election cycle, we did get into a situation where we had a dispute with, again, an independent election committee, and we, the council was in a position where we had to decide whether or not to expend public funds for the enforcement of the ordinance. And because of because of these cases, I think that there is a heightened risk of being in the same situation in this next election. And so I thought it was prudent to make you aware of these court cases before we had a dispute, so that you could provide direction, and then everybody could go into this election season with knowing what the rules were going to be, at least through November of this year. But because of the fact that this is in fact a voter-approved ordinance, that led to my second recommendation, which is I don't think it's appropriate to just let it lie as is. I think that there ought to be a committee that would evaluate the types of regulations that are lawful, the types of regulations that are still appropriate for this committee, to prepare a proposed amendment and put it before the voters of this community, so that ultimately we have a new ordinance on the books that is legally enforceable and endorsed by the voters.
Any further discussion? If there's none, is there a motion?
I'll move we accept staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None? Call for roll call vote.
Payne.
Aye.
Claire.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Meredith.
Oh.
Shelton.
Aye. Passed. Next item, community development.
Temporary sign regulations, City Council request.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the audience. At the May 18th meeting, there were a couple of speakers talking about various signs that had gone up in the community at that time. A couple of concerns as a result of that discussion were expressed by council, and you directed staff to come back with this report tonight. Those two concerns principally were, one, that maybe we need to provide a better understanding by way of a informational brochure to the business community, and that they may not be familiar with the temporary sign regulations, and that secondly, the council review the regulations in light of the current economic conditions. Sandy Curiou in our office has prepared the report before you tonight. She also has a PowerPoint presentation that kind of summarizes and tracks the staff report. So with that, I'll have Sandy go ahead with the presentation at this time.
Thank you, Kurt. I do want to, for the benefit of the audience, clarify that a specific action cannot be taken by City Council tonight. Tonight's just to get general direction on the direction that you want staff to pursue. If some kind of an ordinance amendment is requested, then we would have to go through the procedure and adequate public hearing notice and input. Okay. The purpose of the sign ordinance as set forth in the Galt Municipal Code, there were A through G of purpose statements that were adopted. Probably the most important ones are to preserve and improve the appearance of Galt as a place to live, work, and visit, to promote commerce, to balance the needs of the business and development community, to advertise their goods and services, with planning goals related to streetscape aesthetics and traffic safety, and to eliminate confusing, distracting, or dangerous sign displays which interfere with vehicular traffic. The sign regulations were drafted to achieve these goals back in 1998, and I think the city's been pretty successful. There are now basically two categories of signs. There's permanent signs and temporary signs. The regulations for permanent signs were designed to keep building and freestanding signs in scale with their surroundings and the zoning district in which they are located. Those sign allocations are pretty generous. In fact, in most cases, we find that businesses don't actually utilize their full allocation of permanent sign area. Temporary signs, on the other hand, were included in the sign ordinance as a way to allow businesses an additional opportunity to advertise
Sandy?
Sure.
I think you should probably put that on a like slideshow version
yeah.
because we're getting the bottom half cut off.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
There.
Thank you.
So temporary signs were intended to give some additional allocation, so you don't have to use your permanent sign area and you don't have to bear the cost of putting up a permanent sign. In fact, one of the findings necessary for the planning director to approve a temporary sign permit is that it is temporary in nature. The code specifically says for grand openings, special promotions, etc., and it does not constitute regular advertising. That is the main reason that several businesses were contacted by code enforcement a few weeks ago for displaying those vertical banners. Ruben tells me they're called feather banners, that just said tacos or flowers or barber. Those banners were not advertising a special promotion or event. They were simply advertising a product offered at the business. And then the other reason was that they did not check with the city and obtain a temporary sign permit. For temporary signs, because council wanted sort of a description of what the current ordinance allows, there are two categories of temporary signs. There are those that are allowed without a permit, and that there are those that require a temporary sign permit. The ones on the screen before you allowed without a permit, those include window signs that don't exceed 50% of the window area, governmental or political subdivision flags, like the United States flag or California, and menu boards associated with the drive-through restaurant with certain restrictions. The other category is those temporary signs that do require a temporary sign permit. Those are listed here. Includes air balloons, the big hot air balloon on top of the building or in the parking lot, other inflatable devices, beacons or the light that goes back and forth, any kind of banner, a pennant pole, which are typical around mobile or model home subdivisions, where they put the little flags out on the poles, and portable signs like A-frame signs. Now, just for a point of clarification, that these are regulations from the city's municipal code. In many cases, there are CC&Rs in a shopping center, or there's a master sign plan that the landlord might have imposed more significant restrictions. So I'm just going over what the city's code allows at this point. All temporary signs are subject to some basic general development standards. They cannot be off-site. They can only be on-site to the product that they're advertising. The second way is they cannot be in a public right-of-way, so they can't be on a public sidewalk. And then there's a maximum height. Generally, it's that they can't exceed the height of the building to which they are appurtenant. There is some exceptions if you're in the highway commercial zone or for a flag. For each type of temporary sign, then there are some specific development standards, and this table identifies those. For air balloons, other inflatables, and beacons, basically you cannot display them longer than 5 days in any 1 year by the same user. For a banner, we allow 1 banner per business location. The size is 1 square foot for every linear foot of building frontage. And then they cannot be displayed longer than 90 days, and you can have a maximum of 4 different banners per calendar year. So you can basically have a banner up all year long. It just you have to change the message on it to designate a special event or promotion. Pennant poles are just for subdivision model homes, and portable signs like an A-frame. There's really no limit on the number or the size. You cannot obstruct the pedestrian handicapped accessibility, and under the definition of temporary, it can't be for longer than a year. The procedure to get a temporary sign permit is very simple. There's a brief, basically a half-page application form to the planning department. It's available on the website as well. You pay a $10 permit fee, and then the municipal code sets forth the 3 findings that are required for the planning director to approve a temporary sign permit. That it conforms with those development standards, that it's temporary in nature and is only for special promotions, grand openings, etc., and that it's removed at the time the planning department deems appropriate. And the last thing is you're required to remove the temporary sign at the completion of the display period. This, you can't read it too well, but this is basically the temporary banner application. The information required is the name, address, business name, property owner, the amount of building frontage, the proposed size of the banner, the requested display period, the message on the banner, and then you're signing that you agree to remove it at the end of the display period. And again, it's a $10 application fee. Staff did some checking quickly into what some other cities are doing with this issue. Now, you'll probably laugh when you read some of these because obviously enforcement is not consistent in a lot of the cities. But contrary to some statements that have been made, the city of Lodi actually does not permit any temporary signs in their municipal code. Elk Grove, generally, they allow 2 temporary signs. You can have one that's on the building, one freestanding. You can display them 2 weeks per calendar quarter, and each one can't exceed 6 square foot maximum area. They do not require a permit for that. In talking to their staff, obviously, that makes it much more difficult for them to sort of monitor and enforce that, but that is their code. Citrus Heights, 1 temporary sign for a total of 30 days a year, $150 permit. They let you have an additional grand opening banner for the first 30 days of business commencement at a site. And they do allow 1 A-frame sign per business subject to certain development standards. Roseville is fairly generous. They allow 1 banner. They don't have time limits, message limitations, or a permit. Maximum size, it depends. They have 3 categories. It depends on your street frontage, but it ranges from 60 to 120 square feet. They allow A-frames only in certain districts, like in their Old Town area along Vernon Street. Rockland and Willows adopted sort of an interesting stance that City Council may want to consider. They both adopted an ordinance of temporary economic stimulus regulations for signs. They basically recognized that with the economy in the state it's at, they decided to remove the permit and fee requirement, and they also removed the time limit for display of certain temporary signs, and also the requirement about the message. So basically, for the city of Roseville did a year, and they recently extended it 6 months. Willows just adopted theirs, and it expires in July of 2010, or 2012, sorry. The ordinance states that after the expiration date of the temporary ordinance, all non-conforming signs must be removed within 10 days. So they're basically saying to the business community, we recognize the economy's bad. For a year, we're going to let you kind of, within certain parameters, have some free temporary signage. City Council requested that we identify some alternatives for you. The first alternative, obviously, is to enforce the adopted sign ordinance, now that you kind of know what it allows and doesn't allow. We feel that the existing regulations are already fairly lenient, but they do provide a reasonable framework. The application form and process is pretty simple and inexpensive. Consistent enforcement, we feel, would be an easier way for the business community to sort of learn the rules over time. If it's your direction, we could prepare the easy-to-read fact sheet that Mr. Epstein had recommended. And the public safety concerns about the signs being anchored correctly, attached to the building correctly, that sort of thing, are more easily addressed through the permit process and the current regulations. A second alternative would be to consider the temporary economic stimulus sign ordinance that's similar to what Rockland and Willows did. You could temporarily modify the ordinance requirements due to the economy, and you can sort of see how it's going to affect the community in the short term. If you choose that alternative, staff would basically request some direction from City Council on how far you want to go with that and what sort of issues you want to address. The fiscal impact would take some staff time to do the research, write the interim ordinance, do the appropriate noticing, that sort of thing. So the cost for a zoning text amendment is estimated at $4,855. Third alternative, if you want to consider a permanent sign ordinance amendment to address temporary signs, if you feel that the current ordinance is too restrictive, again, we would request direction as to what elements you feel should be included in that ordinance, and the fiscal impact would be the same as alternative 2. And lastly, any other direction that City Council deems appropriate. That concludes my report. If you have any other questions.
before we have any questions, I think we have a speaker. Would you like to hear the speaker first?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Reuben Epstein.
Yes, I am Reuben Epstein. I live in the city of Galt. I've been here for 33 years. I'm very impressed with the report from staff. Somebody's done a lot of research. Some of the things I agree with, some of them I don't. If you remember, about a month ago I was here suggesting that Galt become more flexible. One of the things is that technology changes. 20 years ago the city did very little interacting with the citizens on the internet. Nowadays it happens all the time. We have a website. The city council meetings are on the web. What I can understand, they're not actually feather signs, they're called feather flags in the industry. I had a hard time finding that out, but I finally did. I was so impressed that the Lions ordered 2 of them to have their fireworks booth. We're in the county, so we don't have to worry. But the technology of those kinds of flags, the tall, thin ones, didn't exist when this ordinance was written. I happen to think, and everybody I've spoken to thinks they look nice. Most of the businesses thought they looked nice because they went out and they bought them. Recently, and I had talked to the manager at Papa's Pizza, she didn't know there was any ordinance against it. They had one up that said pizza. It was on their property. And it's a lot easier to see when you're driving by than trying to find a little sign with multiple names in front of the business. There was reference to obstructing visibility and traffic safety and so forth. I think they make driving much, much safer. There's another pizza place up past Rayleigh's on Twin Cities Road. It's Papa Murphy's. They're in the back of a strip mall. It is very difficult to see their sign unless you know it's exactly there. If they had a pizza sign out by the sidewalk, I think it would make driving a lot safer for people in the cars and for people who might get hit by the cars because the drivers are distracted trying to find a pizza place. The other thing is that, as was said by staff, other cities have rules, but they're not necessarily enforced. Because in Stockton, I see an awful lot of these feather flag signs. And Galt is in competition with those cities. We're trying to get more business here. We're promoting a farmer's market to bring in more business. We have furlough Fridays because we don't have enough income for the city. And we're losing businesses, perhaps, to other cities because they have more easily discovered businesses that somebody might be looking for than they have here in Galt. And I think we should be working with the businesses and the merchants and the Chamber of Commerce to do everything we can to make the Galt businesses as easy to find as possible. If we want people to shop in them, the people have to know they're there. And, the sign in front of a shopping center with 6 different names on it is not at all easy to read when you're driving by. The city put up some direction signs around town for parking and other things, and they're very small. They're hard to read. Sometimes at night you can't read them at all. We have distracting signs on the street lights. Some of the letters are sideways vertically. You have to turn your head 90 degrees to read what it says. That's not real safe to do when you're driving. And I don't think we should be encouraging that. So there are signs out there that are dangerous and a problem now. I think these things make things better. The ones I've seen look nice. Apparently there are a number of companies doing them when I was doing research for the Lions. Most of them are pre-made. That's why they don't say the name of the business, but you can get custom ones, but they're much more expensive. But the affordable ones, the ones I ordered for the Lions were $19.50 each. We didn't order with poles because we're going to be able to borrow somebody else's poles. But they're affordable, and I think they're going to help our fireworks sales. And I hope that if Galt becomes more flexible, they can help a lot of the businesses here. I think that the Galt business builders, the Chamber of Commerce, and the city should get together to figure out a way of coming up with a easily understood ordinance. My guess is that almost all the business in Galt have no idea that there's any ordinance like this for temporary signs. We now have at least 2 signs I've seen, people standing out there twirling them around for food specials. I don't know if they're covered as temporary signs or not.
Mr. Epstein, you'll have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
Okay, comments from council?
I would just say, as a person that had a business at one time, one of the things you're always looking to do is get attention to your business. And if you've been there for a while, sometimes you feel that people are so used to seeing you that they don't see you anymore. So you do these things. You put up special signs or something to try to get attention, and I think that's part of marketing. And I can sympathize with that. I think that it shouldn't have to be necessarily a temporary message, because that's really not the goal that I have in mind when you put up this type of sign. I would be concerned. I think we've come a long way with making our especially our downtown area look a lot better. I would be concerned because of the type of material it is, that it eventually is going to be something not so desirable, maybe faded or torn or whatever. So my feeling is I like the idea of allowing them on a temporary basis. I think they will accomplish what the business is trying to do, which is to attract people to their business. I think after a period of time, they're going to be like every other sign in business, that people aren't going to see them anymore because they're so used to seeing them. But I think they could accomplish a purpose for a while. So I like the idea of the temporary sign for a period of time where they'll be removed after a while. They could be put up again. I think we would be fine to do away with the idea that it has to advertise a special thing like a special sale or a special product. I think just if you want to say pizza, I think that would be fine for what you're trying to do. Again, I would hope that it would stay a temporary sign where it could be replaced after a period of time, and that would be something that we could work on.
Darryl, any comment?
Well, I think we've heard a lot of good points, and probably the biggest problem anything like this is just what people will end up doing versus what we say they're allowed to do. And so perhaps this temporary would be a way to see how it goes, so to speak. I'll use, for example, if we said that people could put things on the sidewalk or in the city's right-of-way to sell in front of their store, and people do it already illegally, it would just get further out of hand. And so I think that's going to be the biggest deal is where does it go from here? I like the idea of getting information out to the businesses to make sure they do understand what we are trying to achieve and what the rules are, and many of them probably don't have current information on that. So I would be concerned about just adopting a permanent change now and ending up with a lot of clutter in the streets, the visual look of areas when we're doing facade improvements. So I think in the end, whatever good we try to do, we're probably going to inherit a enforcement issue, and I guess a temporary measure would be one way to see just how good or how badly this goes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that I think one of our primary goals has been, since we've been on council, is that we want to help promote the small businessman, and I think we're all aware that the economy has taken a major dip. So these particular businesses are not getting the same foot traffic that they got 2, 3, 4 years ago. So they're having to work a lot harder to catch people's attention. And I've been to Lodi. I go to Lodi fairly frequently, and I see the sandwich signs up for the businesses. So I'd have to say that most likely they're not enforcing the policy. That would be my guess. I'd like to see a temporary ban on enforcing the flags to a point where we should at least allow one banner, and I would want some restrictions on those banners because I want them to look professional. and I would want some restrictions in the sense that where they would be placed. In other words, I don't want them blocking the parking lots or the streets. That would be one of my concerns. But I would say on a temporary basis that we would lift this, and with some restrictions, and come back and revisit it, say, in 12 months. But I tend to lean toward the Rockland and the Willow policy where they've lifted it and they're not enforcing it as much. But I think we need to do everything we can to help these small businesses. And I think if the banners look professional, they look good. Like Rick, yours is very good. I'm very impressed with it. It's a feather banner, as Rubens informed us. I would be okay with that. So I think we need to help out these businesses, and I think that this is one way we should do this. So we'll do this on a temporary basis, 12 months, and I'd like to see us come back and revisit it and see how it's working.
I agree. Andrew? Yeah, I agree with what Councilmember Haynes is suggesting. I think something that Mr. Epstein touched on that's really important is the cost of these signs. You're able to purchase them so inexpensively right now that in the event that it became an eyesore at any point because it frayed or something like that, it costs the business owner $20 to replace it, And it's easier for a business owner to step forward and purchase this effective form of advertising rather than spending hundreds or possibly thousands of dollars to construct a permanent sign and mount it to the building. I'd be completely comfortable with instructing staff to refrain from enforcing the policy in regards to these feather signs for the next 12 months if the rest of the council was in agreement.
And you're saying come back and revisit it
in a year.
In a year.
And if it didn't work, then we take it from there.
Yeah, doing a temporary ordinance, you're suggesting just not enforcing it for a year?
Correct.
Yeah, but like Don, you said, with some guidelines.
Some guidelines. You want to have some guidelines in place.
That's
because
why.
we don't want somebody out there at 4 and 5 and then they're competing for the signs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably be comfortable, depending on the size of the business, at least one banner would be reasonable.
I'd be comfortable with one banner.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I like the idea about the information brochure. But go ahead.
I think the attorney is going to maybe speak out.
Right, I think so.
The concern is if we don't do a temporary ordinance, if the council wants restrictions, it's going to be difficult for us to know exactly what to enforce or not enforce.
Unless we bring it back.
Right. I mean, it's easy to say don't enforce, and certainly that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
We could just look the other way, but if there's some requirements that the council wants to impose which would go along with not enforcing, then we really have to get that established by way of, I think, an ordinance change, and we can certainly do that by way of an ordinance that would automatically sunset in a period of 12 months, or you could do it as a permanent change and then bring it back and revisit it in a month or in 12 months. But I think if there's some standards, we would have to have an ordinance in place.
Okay. So I guess there's just a matter of giving direction to staff to.
Yeah, I mean, there's two options. One is if you want to do a temporary ordinance that sunsets after 12 months with specific requirements and regulations, then we can do that. If you just want to give direction that there's no enforcement and let the businesses to kind of self-regulate on the look and appearance of those, and wait and see what crops up, then that's kind of those are your two alternatives at this point.
I think our best bet would be a temporary ordinance so that we address those issues so that it doesn't get out of hand.
Well, what would it cost staff time, just approximately, Steve, in order to put together a temporary ordinance or an amendment to what we already have that would reflect some of the council comments tonight?
Well, I think I'd have to defer to Kurt. I mean, as far as his staff time, I mean, my review would be pretty limited.
I would have one question. If we did it as an interim ordinance in a non-codified ordinance, would that be sufficient in order to modify the municipal code but not codify it? Because that's our cost. Is once you change the ordinance, you're changing the codified code. So then you're in every municipal code in the zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm thinking if you had a standalone ordinance, I don't know whether we can do that or not.
Is that the $5,000 that you
that's
put in
the estimated cost that's right off this fee schedule. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know how I don't think that's an option.
So we would have to change the municipal code.
Right, because, I mean, that's the standard, and that's the ordinance that, in fact, needs to be changed.
If I had a couple of questions for clarification. Sure. And I'm just trying to, there's been a lot of comments and I just want to make sure that we get it covered, assuming that you go with the temporary, and that if you did go with the temporary ordinance, it appears as though you wanted to change it so that the message is not a triggering event. I mean, we're not going to regulate what the comment or what the sign says. That's correct?
That was my thought.
Yeah. And I heard 12 months as a temporary period of time. Is that satisfactory with the council? Because we'll have to go back before the commission and then come back to council with this.
Come back to us anyway.
Yeah.
Kurt, what's the current time limit on a temporary sign? It seemed like it was workable without having
It could go up to a year. It could go up to a year.
6 months to a year.
But we were setting this up as, I think as the attorney was saying, this would automatically sunset in 12 months unless extended by council.
And we wouldn't have to change the ordinance to go with what we have existing?
No, we would have to change the ordinance.
But what does the existing ordinance say, though? Didn't it give a lesser time?
It could be no longer 90 days on certain cases, and you could have 4 different types of signs during a calendar year. But again, that regulation was imposed on special events, grand openings. You want to change it to allow any type of advertising on a temporary sign. So that requires us to go to the ordinance, to the municipal code to make the change.
I was looking at the application, and the application just says to put the wording on the application.
That's correct.
Is that the only place where it really specifies that you have to, it has to be a special event type of sign?
No, it's in the ordinance. The ordinance requires.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not on the application. Simply implements what the ordinance requires.
Here, I had a comment. A way maybe we can do it less expensively and quicker. If we chose a way of keeping the ordinance on the books, but only enforcing certain provisions of the ordinance. So, for example, you don't enforce the requirement to get a permit or charge a fee. Or you don't enforce the requirement that the sign has to be temporary in nature, the message, or that you remove it after 30 days. And so we kind of selectively determine which portions of that ordinance we want to, or you as a council want to enforce over this 12-month period, and then decide after that whether it's working or not. And if you like the way it's going, then you could always codify those new changes at that time. As long as it meets our expectations, where these small business people are able to put up a presentable sign and allowed to be able to let that up on a regular basis, and they can achieve that, I would be okay with that. Because there's certain components of the ordinance that you're going to want. You're not going to want signs in the right-of-way. Right. You're not going to want 10 signs per business. You're not going to want a lot of these things that are in there that we could continue to enforce. But some of the things that you have concerns about, we would just not enforce over that period of time.
Can we do that?
It sounds like we can.
Yeah. I think that I mean, what I was debating here is, you know, if you look at what the current ordinance provides, is you essentially can have one of these pole signs up year round, as long as you change the message every 90 days. I mean, that's the current standard, 1 sign per business, with you change the message every 90 days. So it seems like if the desire of the council is just to allow 1 sign up per business and not to worry about changing it every 90 days, it seems like isn't really the change just to make it take it out of the temporary category and just make it a regular sign, as long as it's one per business and you meet all the other criteria, and you don't have to worry about the message being temporary.
One of the findings for approval of a temporary sign permit is that it be a temporary, it has a special message, has a limitation on the message.
Well, I guess my point is that if the council's direction was, we're comfortable with one sign per business, and we just don't want it to have to be changed every 90 days, and we don't want to worry about the message. Can't you just use the same standard that's in the code, but change the classification, so in lieu of it being a temporary sign, it can be a permanent sign, but all the other standards would be the same, that maybe there wouldn't be any fee, there wouldn't be a $10 fee, but you'd still come in, you'd fill out the form, you'd be able to check for, not creating a traffic issue, meeting whatever other, criteria we'd typically look at, and you approve it that one time, and it could be up there in perpetuity. So I was just looking for a simple change to the code that would not, meet what I think is the council's direction here tonight.
So you are talking a change to the code?
No, you're not. You'd
Right.
still change the code?
I mean, if that's the end goal, just to basically leave it in place, but just not have it. Essentially, it's not temporary. I mean, that'd be the change. I mean, how much work's involved in? I know we've got to go through the process, but aren't we pretty much talking about a few word changes here?
There's not a significant amount of work as far as that goes. It's just going through that process.
But we can just direct staff to not enforce the temporary portion of that policy, correct?
Well, as Steve said, it's the message, it's the duration with different messages, which is the 90 days. If you look under banners, it's 90 days. We do away with that. We simply don't enforce it. Basically, if they're going to stick a flag up there, it's going to stay there for a year as a banner, and one per business location. And then
there is also a size restriction. I don't know if all businesses would meet that. You can have 1 square foot of signage for every linear foot of building frontage. I know that barbershop's fairly narrow, and I don't know the exact dimensions of that flag, but your width.
Can't we just really boil it down to 3 council directions? Let's say we don't change the ordinance, and the direction from council is we direct staff not to enforce the display limitations, not to enforce the restrictions on the message, and to waive the $10 fee. So if those 3 things were in place, and that was the direction, somebody that wanted to put up one of these banners would have to come in, they'd fill out the form, there would be no charge, you wouldn't worry about it, you wouldn't worry about the 90 days, you wouldn't worry about enforcing the message, and they could put up the sign, and that would be the change in the enforcement for at least a period of time. And I think that if ultimately this became the long-term policy, we've got to come back and we've got to change the ordinance. But as far as, a pilot program, it seems like if we made those 3, if we got those 3 directions from council, no display limitations, no message limitations, no $10 fee, that seems like we've achieved the purpose that.
I would also want to throw in there the maximum size, because you could have a small, 15-foot or 10-foot narrow building, and I don't know that it'd be a problem, but I would suggest that you throw the maximum sign size limitation in as well.
Well, are you waiving that, or you'd leave it in place?
Or you leave that in place?
One square foot per 1 linear foot of building frontage.
We leave it in place, but it may cause a problem. In most cases, it should not, but it might.
All right.
Yeah.
All other provisions of the ordinance would be enforced.
Right.
Yeah, and all other provisions would be enforced. And this really, the difficulty is we're dealing with one type of sign today. I don't know what type of sign they're going to come up with next week.
Right.
So I mean, it's like, I think I get the message from council. At least as these feather flags go, this is what we'll do then, if that's the direction of council.
Okay. That satisfy council?
Yep. I'm satisfied with that.
So we
Darryl?
plan on bringing this back in 12 months?
I'd say 12 months, yeah.
Put it on the calendar.
I think the economy's not going to rebound anytime before that, so.
Let me ask Darryl if he has any. Do you have any comments, Darryl?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. Barbara, I am.
No, I'm done.
Thank you,
I'm
Kurt
fine.
and Sandy, for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
And Rick, thank you for bringing it to our attention. We do appreciate it. All right.
Do you have direction?
You got it.
Okay. Next item.
Senior Nutrition Program, contract services with Meals on Wheels by Asian Community Center.
No, not coming out, boys. I think he's going to hand you another mic. Okay.
Due to the county's general fund deficit, they can no longer provide the nutrition lunch program for the seniors here in our community and throughout Sacramento County. The Area 4 Agency on Aging has recommended the Asian Community Center to provide the nutrition lunch program Sacramento County wide for the seniors of the areas. The agreement before you this evening is the same terms and conditions that it has been with Sacramento County for the last 5.5 years. And just to give you a brief history on that, was back in...
Yeah, I think we need to pause for a minute. We've lost our quorum. Even though we've still got Daryl on the phone, he's outside the jurisdiction, so we need 3 members present up here to have a quorum. So maybe we could take a 5-minute recess.
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Does that mean I can leave the room?
For 5 minutes.
You're deputized. You snuck out?
5 minutes, huh?
Oh, well, I said. Okay. Sorry. Oh, no, that's, I didn't realize that. Okay. Okay. Well, here, we'll give Well, I thought I'd just move over.
Okay.
We're not going to have you start all over, though, okay?
Is it okay?
You want to see what? Apologize. I said to staff I was going to leave, but he must did something come up there. I know, but with that. Well, we have to have the clerk. Go find our. You haven't had dinner either. I just had a snack earlier.
Well, I heard the lake was up by 24. There will be a game.
Yeah.
I mean.
Just by night.
Well, I know, but all we need is Donna. Boys, we could go get Donna. Wait.
so.
I never signed with
I didn't realize. I didn't catch that.
you. The mayor went out and then you.
I didn't notice you.
I didn't see you either.
Yeah, see, I was just like,
Okay, we're back, Darryl.
Daryl, you here?
You back, Daryl?
I'm here.
Okay, all right.
Well, that concludes my staff report. If you have any questions, Dr. Yi is in the audience from the Asian Community Center regarding the senior nutrition lunch program.
Doctor, would you like to come up to the podium in case there's any questions for you or any comments you'd like to make? Council?
Well, my comments are, I am so thankful that the Asian community is willing to take on this program. It's so important to the local people in Galt. Some of these seniors, this is the only connection they have with other people is through the Meals on Wheels or even in the congregate meals. I don't really have any questions. I support it 100%, and I'm just thankful that we have an alternative to losing the program.
Okay. Any other comments by council?
I'd also like to thank you for doing this. I know it takes a lot out of people, and it's really important, so appreciate you stepping up to the plate and doing what you're doing. It's great.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is really we'll still be able to continue the program, so.
And our plan is not to cut the number of meals at all, but to really serve the need in the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And thank you for sitting through our council meeting.
For 2.5 hours. Was there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Payne, excuse me, Payne?
Aye.
Claire?
Aye.
Payne?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Shelton?
Aye. Good. Thank you. Next item, Public Works Department.
Contract amendment for design and construction services for the Golden Heights Water Treatment Plant Expansion Phase 3 project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm glad we can finally get to the exciting part of the agenda. The next item is a recommendation that you authorize the city manager to approve an amendment to the contract with Ecologic for additional design and construction support services for the Golden Heights Water Treatment Plant Expansion Phase 3 project. Back in October, council authorized the city manager to execute the original design contract with Ecologic for this project. The Golden Heights Water Treatment Plant is served by 2 wells, Golden Heights well and the recently constructed Monterey Bay well. The project is to build arsenic treatment for the Golden Heights well and manganese and iron treatment as part of the Monterey Bay well improvements. Shortly after we began the first arsenic project a couple years ago, we discovered that Elk Grove had dug an extra deep well down to 1,700 feet and found a new aquifer that was arsenic free. We put a test hole down at our Costwell site last year, and we discovered the same aquifer that has a higher yield. The yield for the wells is about 3,000 gallons per minute as opposed to 1,500. So we're getting an extra whammy. We'll get more water, and it's better water. Our research indicates that the aquifer is going to exist under the Golden Heights well site, and so we're proposing a change in that project. We did a life cycle cost to compare the cost of installing a new, deeper well to the 1,700-foot aquifer and putting that well in that does not need arsenic treatment as opposed to treating arsenic over 20 years. And you just about break even at the 20-year point. There are other benefits of going without arsenic treatment. It's safer for the workers. It gives us more flexibility in running the sites. We recommend we pursue the installation of the deep well. Since Ecologic is already involved in the design, we talked to them and proposed an amendment to their contract to do the additional design work, to install the monitoring well, test the aquifer, make sure it's there, do a water quality analysis, and then design the production well. The original proposed fee was $385,000, and as they proposed it, that included a 15% discount of about $24,000. We ultimately negotiated an even better deal of $355,652. A copy of Ecologic's scope is included in your agenda package. I won't go through all the tasks now. We are proceeding to complete the original design of the arsenic. We're almost done with it anyway. This will allow us to bid it as an option So if it's affordable in this construction climate, we can get some good prices. That would be an extra backup for the Golden Heights well. We can therefore use both wells. Construction of the monitoring well is anticipated to begin immediately within a completion date of October of this year. Assuming we find the aquifer, we would then design the ultimate well, and that would be completed by July of 2011. That would bring all of our water facilities in compliance with the arsenic rule. There is a direct fiscal impact in the amount of $355,652 to authorize this amendment tonight. Sufficient funds for this contract amendment were included as part of the recently adopted capital improvement project for the Golden Heights Water Treatment Plant in the most recent budget approval. The actual cost breakdown is included in your agenda report up to the $355,000. There are a couple of amendment or alternatives you could direct staff. One is to not pursue the deep well and have us continue with the arsenic treatment. We don't recommend that because over 20 years that is more expensive. You could also direct staff to not award the contract amendment to Ecologic and go out and solicit RFPs from separate engineers. We do not recommend that because we don't really want to have two engineers working on the same design at the same time due to conflicts. It would also probably add a 3-month delay to the project. So staff is recommending that you authorize the city manager to execute the contract amendment. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Comments from council?
I just got to ask you one question. Is there any downside as far as future water available by going deeper now instead of continuing with a more shallow reservoir?
We think going deeper is better. It's just more expensive. The well is significantly more expensive to install, and that's why it takes 20 years to make up the cost differential. But we get better water, clean water, and more water putting in a deeper well.
But we're not going to be depleting our water supply more by going down deeper.
No, we're not.
Okay, that's my only question.
I have a question for you, Greg. How long ago was it before we found ourselves having to go deeper to get the cleaner water without the arsenic or any other
We completed the test well at the Cos well site last year. Up until then, we weren't aware that this deeper aquifer was there. We went down to the normal depth that everybody around had gone down to, which is 800 or 900 feet. And then my staff, in trying to research the arsenic problem, got wind of some work that people in Elk Grove, some consultants in Elk Grove had done, and they had worked and found the deeper aquifer. And they did some more research and found out it existed other places. And it's a pretty good bet if it exists in Elk Grove, it exists in the south side of Galt. It's going to be up the Golden Heights side as well.
And how far down do you dig for that?
It's about 1,700 feet.
1,700 feet?
Yes.
Have we seen the groundwater go down greatly in the last 5-10 years?
I don't believe it's gone down greatly. There's varying answers to that question, is whether we're in a depleting groundwater or not. We'll be doing an update to our urban water management plan this coming year, and so we're bringing that to council for approval. I don't think the groundwater is increasing, but from what I understand in the south area of the county, it's not significantly decreasing either. It's being managed very well. Council may recall that we are members of the South Area Water Users Group, and that sole purpose of that group is to help protect the long-term viability of our groundwater supplies.
Okay.
Greg, do we know what the source of the deeper aquifer is? Do we know where it's coming from?
I don't know what the ultimate source of it. No, let me ask my staff if they know. So that's the Merton aquifer.
The one that we're on now is off of, it's the Shasta aquifer, is that right?
Mike Wilkinson with Ecologic.
Staff answered that question. It's the Laguna aquifer that you're currently pumping from.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
I have none.
If none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. Do we accept staff's recommendations?
Second.
Contract amendment.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Payne?
Aye.
Claire?
Aye.
Haynes?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Shelton?
Aye. Next item.
Redevelopment calendar. Redevelopment calendar.
Yes. Redevelopment calendar, sorry.
Consent agenda. Subject minutes of meeting of June 1st. Redevelopment agency warrants. Treasurer's report for period ending April 2010.
Okay. And we're supposed to adjourn
Adjourn.
and go into redevelopment agency. Roll call.
Can we be done now? Payne.
Here.
Claire.
Here?
Haynes.
Here.
Meredith.
Here.
Shelton.
Here. No public comment. You read off the consent agenda items. Sorry. Any comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Motion's
Second.
been made and seconded. Any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Payne.
Aye.
Claire.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Shelton.
Aye. Okay. Scheduled matters.
Adoption of Galt redevelopment implementation plan 2004-2014.
Kirk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the item before you tonight is the redevelopment agency implementation plan. This is a plan that simply sets forth the policies and goals for the redevelopment agency to achieve over a specified period of time, in this case, the 2005 to 2014. I tell you, I'm going to let Sandy give you a brief summary of the report. She was the project manager on this update. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you. The important thing for council to know is that the redevelopment, or the agency to know, is the redevelopment implementation plan is not a budget document. In no way obligates the agency to fund any of the identified programs. It just helps you think ahead and plan for redevelopment activities to help alleviate blighting conditions. The staff report identifies all the various components that legally must be included in the agency's redevelopment implementation plan. It was prepared by our consultant Urban Futures, Inc., and city staff to meet those requirements. Ernie Glover from UFI is here with me tonight to answer any questions you might have. I'll go very briefly through the various components of the plan and how we address those in the document. First, the plan sets forth the specific goals and objectives for the next 5 years. There are 2 categories of goals. The first relates to affordable housing. The others are the non-housing programs. The affordable housing goals are set forth in section 4.4 of the plan. They focus mostly on maintaining the city's existing affordable housing stock. The agency's non-housing goals are summarized in section 3.1. They focus mostly on economic development by providing public infrastructure and assisting property owners with rehab and with intensification of use. Unfortunately, expectations for the successful implementation of both of those categories of programs during the next 5 years are very conservative due to the current economy, but the agency will continue to pursue its goals as funding allows. The next required component of the plan is a listing of specific programs, projects, and estimated expenditures that will be made during the term of the plan, and a description of how they will eliminate blight. Most of these programs and projects were gleaned from the Economic Development Roadmap for the City of Galt that was done in 2008, and from the Downtown Specific Plan. Others are ongoing projects that staff expects to bring forward, such as the C Street improvements east of Lincoln Way. Next required component is a description of how the goals, objectives, programs, and expenditures will help implement the affordable housing requirements of the agency. Thanks to the development of affordable housing projects like Grizzly Hollow 3 and like Comfrey Senior Apartments, the agency was able to overcome a small deficit of 12 units of inclusionary housing at the end of the last implementation cycle that ended in 2004. Currently, we have a surplus of 19 affordable inclusionary units, and we're projecting to end the next 5-year cycle with an even larger surplus, about 87 units, due to the ongoing development of Galt Place Senior Apartments. Because we'll be in a surplus state, therefore most of the goals and programs in the plan focus more on maintaining and preserving the existing housing stock than on new construction. Related to this topic, the implementation plan must include an explanation of how the low-mod housing fund will be used annually over the term of the implementation plan, and estimates of the number of units to be assisted in each of the 5 years. As I noted, we're not doing any funding assistance for new construction. Funding is mainly going to be on rehabilitation efforts. Next, we need to show the number of qualifying very low, low, and moderate income units that were provided in the project area, and the number of additional units that will be required over the next 10 years to meet the agency's 15% inclusionary housing requirement. If you're not familiar with inclusionary housing, redevelopment law obligates the agency to ensure that 15% of all new or substantially rehabbed housing units developed in the project area are affordable to low or moderate income families, and then 40% of those units have to be affordable to very low income families. Units only count toward that requirement if they are affordability restricted over the long term, which is 55 for rental and 45 years for ownership. And the agency's taken some action to participate in that, so we've participated financially usually is the easiest way. Since adoption of the original project area in 1983, 494 residential units have been provided in the redevelopment project area. Right now we have an inclusionary surplus of 8 very low income units and 11 low mod income units due to Grizzly Hollow and Comfrey Senior. Due to the state of the economy, for the next 5 years, we've only assumed construction of Galt Place within the project area. We didn't assume any other housing in the project area through 2014. Oddly enough, even though it is an affordable housing project itself, the construction of Galt Place actually generates an inclusionary housing requirement. So another 12 units have to be provided for affordable because there's 80 units being constructed. But they are providing 56 very low income and 24 low income units, so we are still going to have or exceed our exclusionary obligation by 87 units at the end of the term of this plan. The last 2 required elements of the plan relate to if the agency directly develops housing in the project area and what happens if we destroy housing units, affordable housing units, and require replacement. Neither of those scenarios are anticipated during this plan cycle. In conclusion, staff notes that to date, the agency has been very successful in implementing our redevelopment programs and managing our budgets. However, the negative economic climate in the state of California has affected the agency's revenue stream through reductions in tax increment growth. Additionally, the state of California passed the Supplemental Revenue Educational Augmentation Fund, or CRAF legislation, that allowed the state to basically take back redevelopment funds from the agency. There's an ongoing appeal of a lawsuit that we're hoping the Redevelopment Association will be successful in, but they did lose in lower court. Therefore, we had to make a CRAF payment of a little over $1 million for the current fiscal year, and another payment of $232,000 will be made next fiscal year. The legislation establishing the CRAF has no provisions for repayment, so that the agency has lost those funds permanently. Consequently, the agency board is advised that implementation of the goals and objectives of the implementation plan could be curtailed based on actual funds available to the agency over the 5-year period. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions for myself or for Ernie, we'd be happy to answer those.
Comments from council?
I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
We will need to open
Oh,
a public
sorry.
hearing.
We have to do an open public hearing. Thank you. Are there any members of the audience wishing to speak on this matter? If none, we'll close now.
And I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? None? We'll roll call vote, please.
Haynes?
Aye.
Claire?
Aye.
Haynes?
Here.
Meredith?
Aye.
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 Sheldon?
What was that, aye all the way around?
Yes.
Okay. Adjourn and reconvene to the Galt City Council meeting. City Clerk's report.
National Night Out, rescheduling or canceling the meeting of August 3rd, 2010. At the last City Council meeting, Council expressed a desire to attend National Night Out on August 3rd. The city clerk's office contacted Sacramento Metro Cable, and they would only be able to cover the meeting if it was held on Wednesday, August 4th, due to other scheduled commitments during the week. At this time, council can cancel the meeting of August 3rd, or reschedule the meeting to the preceding Monday or the following Wednesday.
Desire?
I'd be comfortable with whatever staff feels comfortable with. If they feel there's nothing pressing, they can hold off till the meeting, second meeting of August, I'd be okay with it. I'll leave that up to you. If it's up, if the rest of the council's okay with that, that is.
I had not even considered not having the meeting.
No,
Jason, were you gonna comment on that?
It's kind of hard to tell at this point what items we have on there, and I haven't looked on the 60-day to kind of see. Most likely, we would be able to shift items either before or to the next meeting on the 17th. I know we do have at least a couple items scheduled for the 17th. Park Master Plan is on the 17th, so that wouldn't be affected. I'm not aware of any items that we have right now tentatively scheduled for the 3rd that would be affected. It couldn't be moved, so we potentially could cancel the meeting.
Okay, and then the other option of moving it to Wednesday of that week wouldn't work?
You don't have our calendar in front of me.
Or Monday? Or you said Wednesday was the only time it was available? Fourth.
Count for cable.
Okay.
Mhm. I mean, if the council cancels the regular meeting, and then as we get closer, if there's an issue, you always have the opportunity to set a special meeting.
Right. Yeah, I'm apprehensive about canceling a meeting at all. Desire of council, I mean.
I'm a little concerned about it too.
I'm good either way.
Okay. I would rather set the meeting and rather than miss one, because I know you don't know
Well,
far
I mean,
out.
if there are concerns, if there are timing issues and things we need to present at that meeting, we'll know in July, and we can advise the council at that time if our recommendation is that we hold that meeting and we could schedule it at that time.
Okay. So we're going to wait till our next meeting then before we make that decision?
Well, you could, I mean, really, it's up to the council. We don't foresee at this time, any issues that couldn't be moved to another council meeting, 17th or the second meeting in July. But if something were to come up, so you could cancel it tonight. Something were to come up, we could readdress it at either the July 6th or the July 20th meeting. Or if the council's not comfortable with that, you could certainly just set the day tonight and say we want to do it on August 4th or August 2nd. It's up to the council.
Randy, I lean the way you do. I'd leave it on the calendar for now.
I agree.
Yeah.
We'd always have a really short meeting.
Which day?
Was it the 4th?
Mm-hmm. August 4th is cable. Can come and cover the meeting.
Well, that was the night they said they could do it.
They could.
That they could do, which is
would probably be the best way to go then.
Okay.
Darryl, you going to be here the 4th?
At this point, I don't know what my travel schedule will be.
okay.
Do you need a motion for this? Or can we just decide?
I think we ought to have a motion.
I move
What?
that
Yeah.
we reschedule the meeting to not August. It is August.
Right, it is
August
August.
4th, so that we can be a part of National Night Out.
Okay. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
If not, I'll make it. Okay. Any further discussion? None? Roll call vote, please.
Payne.
Aye.
Claire.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Shelton.
Aye. Okay. August 4th.
Third day, I won't be here.
Yeah, I'll miss my other meeting. Okay. Staff comments? Jason?
Nope. Not aware of any.
No.
We're good.
Okay. Okay. Comments by council members. Vice Mayor Payne.
I have a couple of things, maybe just one to report on the Sacramento Transportation Board meeting. Our expenditures were approved, and the report is ongoing Measure A allocation was $782,402. Total distribution for the third quarter was $310,722. total distribution year-to-date is $622,508. Unexpended balance is $622,508. And that was approved at the last meeting. In addition to that, I would just say that I thought our farmers market was awesome. Everyone I talked to was enthusiastic about it. They were so enthusiastic. They want to have the street closed every Thursday now because they felt like it was so beneficial. The committee, the Shop Local Committee, has been working very hard. They meet every Wednesday morning at 8:30. It's a combination of the Chamber of Commerce, local business people. They put a lot of thought and creativity into it. We're looking for the next highlight to be the second Tuesday in July, and some of the things we're considering is a salsa contest and kind of using that as a theme. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. I think it's doing what we wanted. It's bringing people down to that part of town. The merchants that I talked to said they had the best day they ever had, especially from 5 to 8. So I think they did a good job.
Thank you. Councilmember Clare?
Nope, I have nothing.
Okay. Councilmember Haynes?
I'm good, I have nothing.
Councilmember Meredith?
Just a couple brief things. I'm glad to see that the voters of California were smart enough to see through the smoke screen that PG&E put up on Prop 16 and defeated that in the primary election. I'd also like to congratulate our supervisor from District 5, Don Natoli, on his successful re-election campaign. He's served the county well, and he's served the citizens of Galt well during his tenure on that board of supervisors. Also wanted to announce that my wife and I found out today that our home, the home that we're purchasing in Flournoy, was a short sale, and the short sale was approved by the bank today. So we now know that our closing date will be no later than July 15th. So I am now 100% certain that my last city council meeting will be July the 6th. So I'll meet with the city attorney to go over everything that I need to before then, but that meeting will be my last meeting. That's all I've got.
Well, I want to thank everyone for tonight, even though we kind of took maybe a little longer than we thought, but our next meeting, as Andrew just said, will be July the 6th. So with that said, I'd like to just wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July. We'll see you on July the 6th. We will adjourn at 9:44. Thank you, Darryl.
Good night, Darryl.
Good night.
Give that to Donna to get to Darryl. That's what he wants,
Oh,
but
that's
okay. Turn you off.
Turn you off.
You're off. Over now.
Anybody can hold the papers, see if those are rules, regulations, that are not. Next issue.
You going to the Kaiser groundbreaking tomorrow?
You know, that's what all about.
I'm going. I'm taking my car. It seems like it's like 30 or
Someone's going to kill some boars for me.
Because I'm working tomorrow, like from 4 to 10 o'clock.
I don't think it's a big deal.
Well, I wanted to. Right, okay. No, good, good. And I agree with you.
And I'm going to be there, so I don't think.
It's a disaster.
You can't be there at
No, but I agree with you. You know, whether it's Smith or Kaiser.
It was astonishing that we got it right under the line. Everybody else is failing.